Hi, everybody. So we've just put all the links in the chat to learn more about Cooper, Play to Progress, and Nara Organics. Nara, I say that with my New York accent all the time, Esther. I'm sorry, it's so offensive. We're so happy that you're here for Sensory Milestones, What Really Matters. I'm Marielle Benjamin. I'm the Director of Groups at Cooper. I have with me two very, very special guests that are going to also introduce themselves. Just a quick note on Cooper. Allie, will you advance me one? We are a virtual parenting home base, and we do talks like these, like the assembly you're joining today, and also small parent groups that meet monthly. We match parents around their child's age and the criteria that matter most to you, and we go through your parenting journey. So everything from how your child is developing to all of the tips and tricks, ins and outs, ups and downs of the parenting struggle. So check us out to learn more. Join a Coop group. Yeah, no, perfect. You were anticipating what I was going to say next. And we're so excited to be able to co-host this event with Nara Organics. And I was going to let Esther introduce herself and tell us a little bit about their amazing app and formula to come.
Hi, thank you, everyone. My name is Esther. I'm the founder and CEO of Nara Organics. We are a new baby formula launching this summer. Nara is the name of my daughter, who's now 6 years old, but I started Nara after she was born, and I couldn't find a formula that was clean, one that I trusted, even amongst organic ones. So we created a formula based on incredible nutrition that's found in organic whole milk, especially whole milk fats. I know feeding is complicated, and I hope that Nara will be helpful to everyone. It takes a very long time to create infant formula, a new one. So during that time, I also created Nara Baby Tracker, which is an app that helps you keep track of all things baby, feeding, diapers, sleep, routines, and milestones, which we will cover with Dr. Allie, and much, much more. And as a mom and as someone very interested in infant development, I'm really excited to be here for this discussion on sensory play.
Yay, thank you. And thank you to whoever put in the message that the chat is disabled. I'm going to promptly work on how to. I have fixed it. I was like, no one's telling us how old their babies are or where they're calling from. But can you go back one slide? I think, Esther, this was more information on the app, which the link is in the chat. And now hopefully everybody can be able to get to it as well. And then
Awesome.
Allie, over to you. We're so lucky to have Dr. Allie Ticktin here to talk to us about sensory play.
Hi, everyone. So as we get started today, I'm going to ask you to put some things in the chat, and I'm just going to preface this by saying I am horrible at technology. We just had a whole thing with the slides. So if I don't catch your question, I'm really sorry. I'm really going to try to figure out how to look at them. I think it makes sense I'm bad at technology, given I'm giving a talk on sensory play, which is the opposite of tech. So I am the founder of Play to Progress. I am also a pediatric occupational therapist. Specifically, I specialize in something called sensory integration. It is my passion. I love sensory. And I also wrote a book, Play to Progress, and it's right here. You can buy it anywhere where books are sold. So let's just jump right in and talk about the sensory system in your baby. Real quick, I love to do this. When you think of sensory play, drop in the chat, what do you think of? What are some things that you think of when you hear sensory play? And I'm just curious, like, what are the first things that pop in your mind? Let's see if fine motor skills. That's what I don't often hear. That's good. Crinkly toys. That is definitely more what I hear. Marielle put weighted toys, but she knows.
I'm putting things I hear. I'm doing it on behalf of clients, not just me. I'm not cheating.
Playing with things like sand and texture and touch. Exactly. So that is most commonly what people think of when they hear sensory play. They think of touch. So we're going to really go into what true sensory play is not saying that texture play is not sensory play, because it is one aspect of it, but it's really not all of it. And I think we're at this stage now where we know sensory play is important for our kids, but we don't know why, and we don't know what it actually is. So we're going to bust some myths here and get into that. All right. So just a bit more about me. Like I said, I'm an OT. I am extremely passionate about sensory. I really saw a need to not only use sensory when we know that there is some sort of sensory challenge, but also in a preventative manner to help build a really, really strong foundation. We know that that is critical in a child's life. So a bit about Play to Progress. We're a play-based learning platform. We have some online courses for parents and a ton in person if you're in the LA area. We also offer parent coaching and a variety of other things. So let's jump into the good stuff. What is the sensory system and why is it important? So just to kind of set the stage here, the first 2 years of a baby's life, a child's life, they're in the sensory motor stage of learning. What does that mean? They're quite literally building the neural connections in their brain through sensory play and movement. So when we talk about, is sensory play critical? Yes. It is 100% critical, because that's how our children are building the architect of their brain. And so during this critical period, we know the first 3 years are really, really critical. The first 2 and even beyond, they're really learning through sensory play. The first 2 years specifically, though, are the sensory motor stage of learning. So children are always learning through their senses. But sensory play, like I mentioned, it involves a lot more than you may think. First, we have 8 senses. Does anyone know what the 3 other senses may be? I know we're always taught we have 5, and I have a joke that I can't ever retire until we're teaching all 8 in preschool classes. But if you have any idea of what you think one of the other 3 senses, hunger, that's a good guess, is, feel free to jump in. Balance and position, balance our vestibular system. All right, let's jump. Proprioception, yay, my favorite one. All right. So yes, there's more than 5. So our 3 additional senses, and we're going to get into all of these. I'm just going to introduce the words right now. The first is our vestibular system. You may have heard of it with like vertigo, balance. You may know somewhat what it involves. The second is our proprioceptive system. That one, less people have heard of. And then our third is interoception. And just a disclaimer about interoception, there's some debate. Is this a sense? Is it not? A lot of research is coming out. For our purpose today, I'm going to call it a sense, but just being true to the science, I want you to know there is some debate. Is it an actual sense? Let's jump into our vestibular system. So what is the input? Movement. What does that mean? Movement is sensory play. So when your little one is at the swing at the park, guess what? That's sensory play. And we don't often think of that as sensory play. We think of that as, oh, they're moving, but we don't correlate that with sensory play. And it actually is sensory play. So when we move, comes to our inner ear and our brain, comes out with our coordination, balance. That's what a lot of people know the vestibular system as. Our eye position during movement. So you can imagine how important that is when a child is coughing from a board as they get older. And our sense of motion. Sense of motion, our relationship with gravity is actually really important. It also correlates with a child's self-confidence. We need a little one to be comfortable moving. If not, what's going to happen? They're going to go into the preschool class the first day. All the kids are moving all around, then they go on the playground and they're not comfortable playing. So they retreat. And it can look like they're struggling with friendships when really they're not comfortable in their body. We want to make sure our kids are comfortable in their body. That is part of laying a strong foundation. Next is my personal favorite sense. It's my personal favorite because it's incredibly calming. Proprioceptive input can be incredibly calming. I can talk this morning. So in our stretch receptors and our muscles, joints, and skin, they stretch again through our brain, of course, simplifying that there. And then coming out with where we are in space in our force modulation. So understanding where I am in space as I navigate the classroom, as I navigate the living room, as I navigate the playground, and also force modulation. So do I know that I am hugging Johnny way too tight, or am I not aware? Proprioceptive input, and we'll get into how the senses work to help regulate a child later, but is actually incredibly calming. So heavy work. So any force against the muscle, I kind of have a joke like CrossFit for kids, like, you know, pushing the laundry basket filled with clothes and pulling and climbing and jumping. That's all really, really good to help a little toddler calm. Interoceptive input. So the receptors are actually on our organs, again, through our brain. It comes out with our internal awareness. So do I understand my internal cues? Do I understand I need to go to the bathroom? I always use this example because I think it's the easiest to understand. And of course, as we think of potty training, is vital. You have to know, you have to feel, I know that I have to go to the bathroom, right? You also have to discriminate between different internal cues. So do I know that stomach rumble is hungry? Or is it nervousness, right? So those are the two important pieces. Now, this is my way. All of these images, by the way, are from my book. I have long been describing the sensory system using this tree. And thankfully, when you write a book, you get it put into a pretty image. So now I have a beautiful image instead of what it's been for years is me drawing a stick figure on a piece of paper. But what is most important to keep a tree healthy and thriving? The roots, right? But we don't see the roots, but we know we have to nourish the roots in order to get the rest of the tree to thrive. With kids, it's the same. And what the roots are our 8 senses. We need to nourish the roots and make sure we have this strong foundation in order for the rest of the tree to thrive. So at the trunk, I put their foundational skills. So these are things like their visual perceptual skills, things you may recognize, a teacher more likely to recognize, and you may not. And then comes the functional skills. And this is where we hear from parents, like they aren't crawling, or what the very, very specific thing, this is what we hear up here. And this is what you'll often see as a parent. What we look at is what's the why, what's down here. So instead of just working on strengthening the one branch, we want to come down here and really look at their sensory system. But this also means that when they're a baby, and this is my passion, how can we make sure that we set the roots up to be, we give them their best shot? How can we make sure that we're building this strong foundation? So that's what we're going to talk about today. By the way, I am always open to, if you want to drop questions, anything in the chat. I know what we're talking about can sometimes be a little bit of a higher level, and I have a doctorate in it. So sometimes I'll be saying something and it doesn't fully make sense. I am more than happy to explain again. So please, please feel free to drop in the chat if you're ever like, wait a second, what was that?
And Allie, I'm happy to shout those out to you if you can't look and talk at the same time.
Awesome. I have the chat next to me, so hopefully we'll be good. I figured that out. So activities, they don't just use one sense. They require us to combine information from multiple systems simultaneously. So we're really taking everything in at once. We're using that information and we're coming out with an output. And so this is just a very quick example. A toddler is going to use their tactile system to explore the texture of food. Hopefully we're really letting them touch the food as we're feeding them. The proprioceptive system to bring that food to the mouth, and the vestibular system to maintain their posture. So this is just a really easy and quick example. So let's talk about from the 8 senses to meeting milestones and beyond. How do our senses relate? Again, I put this in there again, that the first 2 years are the sensory motor stage. The reason I put it is because I really don't think we value sensory play to the level we need to value it. This really is how a child is building their neural connections. It really is their work. It is critical that we allow them the opportunity to play and explore through all 8 of those senses, moving, everything. Remember, that is all part of sensory play. So brings me to my next, and this is a really big one, and it's going to go with bullet 3. So I'm going to kind of combine them, that it's important that we give babies the space to move and explore. We have hit this point where we're constantly being marketed, just thrown at us. You need this piece of equipment and that piece of equipment. You need this, you need that, you need this, this. But a lot of those pieces of equipment actually are not great for our babies. Why? Not only do they prevent them from moving and allowing them to naturally move through their own developmental process, remembering that the best place for them when they're awake and during playtime is on the floor, where they can explore and move through development naturally. But it also often puts them in a position that they're not developmentally ready for, and often puts them, for instance, like their pelvis maybe in tilted the wrong way, different things like that, in a bad position in these pieces of equipment. And so we always want to try to avoid any baby equipment that's going to put them in a position that they cannot hold themselves. In general, my rule of thumb is really try to avoid it in general. Now, everyone has some here and there, and if you just put them in for a few minutes, that's okay. But some of these like bouncers and jumpers, they love. I'm not going to lie. It's way more fun to be in a bouncer and a jumper than working out on the floor. So they love it, but it's not as great for development. So less is more. You don't need to spend on all of that. And also, I promise you, you will appreciate the extra space in your living room. So, try to avoid that as much as you can. If you do use it, no more than 15 minutes at a time.
Can I interrupt you to say, like, can you speak to the ones that are marketed at promoting development or getting you there faster, which I know what you're going to say about that, but I think sometimes parents choose those with well-meaning intentions because they think they're actually practicing a skill.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that. So I was in Target the other day. I guess it was a few months ago now, but I'm still enraged by it. And I was in the baby aisle, and I walked past, like, everyone calls them something different, like a jumperoo type thing. It was like one of those, they sit in it and there's all the toys around it. Everyone calls it something different. I'm going to call it a jumperoo. And it's like says in there, promotes gross motor skills, like all these things, like on the box. And I was laughing because, I was angry because this thing does the exact opposite of that. If you use it how they intend to use it, which is putting your child in the seat, it's going to do the complete opposite. So yes, you're right. There is a lot of false marketing out there. And it's something to be aware of. It's something why I'm screaming at the top of my lungs at this. And truly, truly the best place for your baby is on the floor. Now, I am a big fan of baby proofing. Now they have those like giant baby play yards with the gates so you can create a nice safe spot. I am a huge fan of that. I'm the biggest baby proofer. You should see Play to Progress. I'm like constantly looking at every little safety thing. But I do that because I want to give them the space to move, and of course also make sure they're safe. That's the number one thing. So use the baby gates, use those things as much as you can. And yes, you sometimes are going to need somewhere for 5 minutes. And if you do, I always say to go to like the baby bjorn, like little bouncers that they're just leaning back in. It's really simple. It's not electronic, something like that. that's more simple than anything that they're going to sit up in. I am sometimes hesitant to say brands because, but I will say this one, the Bumbo is really my worst nightmare. So if you have the Bumbo, that's really one that I say like no minutes in, really try to avoid that. And then we want to let them experience a variety of experiences. What does that mean? Well, we saw our babies during COVID didn't get this, right? They didn't get to go out in the world and hear the noises and go to the park and bring them to the park. If you have an older child, we often hear parents being like, shh, no, hear all that noise. Let them experience the world. Bring your toddler out, bring them to the park, bring them to the grocery store, let them hear and take in all the different smells and noises, everything that they're going to experience in the world. I know there's a few questions. So are playpens a better option for their development? I don't love like the playpens that are the tiny playpens like we used to have as kids. If you remember, we were always kind of put in playpens back in the day, but the big play yards are great. Now, like do you guys know what I'm talking about? Chewy, actually, I just bought one, was looking for one, and Chewy, which is the dog company, oddly, has some really good ones. So if you're looking for one,
I think they're also marketed just as connected gates, right? So you can also decide how big or how small it is by putting the pieces together. But I think that's what you're referring to, right?
Exactly. So that's what I mean. They're like bigger, they're bigger areas, but you can still keep everything nice and safe. And sorry guys, preschool is walking upstairs right now. So if you hear some noise, there's going to be little ones right on the other side of this door. So, and the high chair for feeding, absolutely. But you want to make sure they have good posture in their high chair and their feet are supported. Not all high chairs have the foot bar. Really make sure it has the foot bar. You don't need anything fancy. You can get the one from IKEA and add a foot bar. Okay.
You're going to do tummy time. You also have one about the upseat and a baby with reflux who needs to sit up and can't sit up on their own.
Right. I totally am missing this question. Where is this? Oh, and we're going to get to tummy time. We have a few slides on tummy time. So we will definitely get to this, but if you need to prop your baby up who has reflux, definitely prop them up. We know that's something that we need. And I'm talking in general, these pieces of equipment that are very much kind of squeezing them in and really placing them in a position they can absolutely not hold themselves. The Bumbo, it sticks them in. Have you ever looked at their position in it? They're like arched over. There's no way they even can use their core. Like they literally are, there's no way they can even practice that in that seat. So that's what I'm looking at. Some of the jumperoos, guess what? It pushes them onto their toes. We don't want that. We don't want to promote any toe walking. So any thing like that. I see this recommendation for asking me for a rec for high chairs. Honestly, you don't need the big fancy high chair, but it's important that they have good posture in the high chair and that they have the foot bar. That piece is important. You can add, like I said, you can buy the IKEA high chair and there's like tons on Pinterest that you just add the foot bar. You can do that with any high chair. Just it's important that they have that foot bar and that they fit in it well. All right, let's talk about a child's self-regulation and their senses. So our senses have this ability to calm or to alert us. What do I mean? What happens when you go on a swing and you're going fast? Well, if you're going really, really fast on a swing, your energy comes up. That is using vestibular in an alerting way. What happens when we gently rock a baby? Also vestibular, we're using it in a calming way. So knowing how to shift your environment is actually critical. It's critical now all the way through childhood, because when your little one is in the grocery store and they don't get what they want, they come home, they have a big tantrum, or maybe they start at the grocery store, whatever it is, you want to know, what tools do I have? What to do with my voice? My voice doesn't go louder because that's more learning. My voice goes loud. I hear you. I understand. You're using yourself to bring them down, right? And so this includes with a fussy baby. This is a big thing with feeding. As they get older and they're distracted and looking all around, what do we want to do? We want to make the environment into this calming environment. Why do we have nurseries that are so calm and lovely? Because it gives to their sleep, right? But then sometimes that we hit the toddler stage and we let them put a lot of toys in their bedrooms, and we put a lot more input, but then they're not sleeping. Why? Because they have all this stuff in their bedroom. So trying to keep that stuff out of the bedroom is actually really, really important. And I'll say this, I always sometimes will look at the reviews of my book online, and this is the suggestion that gets the most hate. But I understand it's not always feasible. But remember, you actually don't need a lot of toys. You do not want a lot of toys. There is actually research on this. So if you don't have many toys, one basket in the living room isn't so bad compared to baskets and baskets of toys. Definitely have some books in, the bedroom, a cozy, a calming corner, things like that. And start that when they're young, talking like 18 months, even sooner, 12 months, have a little cozy spot in there. This goes back to also needing to understand our baby's cues. So we want to really understand a little one's cues, what they need, and then how to react. If that makes sense. So you're saying, oh, I see they're starting to go up. I'm going to move myself down. I got it. Lower the lights. Again, bright lights, alerting, lower, calming. Put on calm music and start to shift the environment to use their sensory system to bring them down. Erica, your question, only books in the bedroom. Okay, totally fine. And again, all these suggestions I'm giving, I always want to know, take what works for you and your family. And we want to make sure they have the confidence to move their body, explore, and engage. What does this mean? So when I was filming one of our online courses, this mom came in with her baby, and then she was like, he can't move. He was a really solid walker or really solid, like, cruiser, sorry, not yet a walker. And she's like, no, he can't transfer to one thing with the other. I was like, I bet he can. I was like, do you trust me to let him try? And she said, yes. And we had 2 items that were just his perfect size to transfer over. And at first he didn't know. And mom wanted to jump in and grab him. And I was like, just let him. And I coached him. I was like, you got it. You can do it. And I gave him a lot of time. So as they're trying these things, and they may look at you like, I don't know how to do it, and they may look stuck, coach them, right? You got it. You can do it. You're doing it. And eventually he moved from one thing to the other, and his mom was so excited. And he then had that confidence to do it. So it's letting them, even at that age, even as they're starting to crawl, as they're starting to roll, making sure that you're giving them the confidence, you're helping them, and you're giving them the chance. That means waiting. And this, for me, I'm a fast mover. This is hard for me. Even I've been doing this for years, and I have to remind myself, wait longer. If they're about to roll, get your toys and everything in the right position. We'll talk about, and then just wait and coach them through. So you're using a really gentle voice, like, I see you're trying so hard. You can do it. You got it.
You have
So
two
that's what I
questions,
mean.
Allie, in the Q&A. If a baby doesn't have good posture, does that mean they're not ready for eating?
They should be able to actively sit up. They should be able to sit up and hold their head before they're eating. And I know some people don't wait for babies to sit up. My opinion is you wait till they sit up to be safe.
And then the other one is, what about a sound machine? Is that impacting their
I
auditory
love sound
sense
machines.
negatively?
No,
Not impacting. Okay.
yeah, go for a sound machine. I love them. They're very calming. Yeah. So if a sound machine works for your little one, more power to you. Honestly, I sleep with sound. It's a good tool into our adulthood. So, all right. So let's talk about how to set up your environment for success. Less is more. There's actually research on this. Less toys is actually better for your baby. They're going to play with that toy in different ways. They're going to push their imagination. They're also going to play with it for longer periods of time. So less is more. You don't need a lot of toys. And I know we get a lot of toys. My suggestion is throw them under the bed in a bin and just switch them out. Again, we've talked a lot about this, avoiding baby equipment. And then this is a big one, and it starts as infants. Being picky about your toys really matters. And I'll give you an example. These toys that light up and play and our babies love, they of course love them, but they don't require them to do anything, right? If a toddler has a dog that she pushes the dog and the dog moves and barks, she's going to push it and kind of watch it. But if she has a wooden dog or a stuffed dog, she's going to have to take that dog on an adventure and be the one to make the sound and decide where the dog goes. She's going to move. So these electronic toys, even though they're not screens, they play for our children. Try to pick toys that don't require batteries. That's kind of my rule of thumb. And people will always say, like, my baby loves the electronic toy. And I had one family say to me recently, so funny, after your pre-crawlers class, I took away, like I threw out all the battery toys, and all of a sudden my little one started playing with the wooden toys when before she hated them. And so then she started using them. Her preference was the battery toys over the wooden toys because of course it is, right? Those are extra stimulating, all of that, but try not to have those in your environment as much as possible. Now you're going to have one or two here and there. So they're also, I hate to say it, but it is true, kind of annoying. So you don't have to worry about all the noises and all of that either. And then you want your toy space to be really, really organized, and that will lead to independence. So as your little one is starting to walk and crawl, we want bins. You can put a picture of the bin. I actually like to put the word of whatever is on it underneath. So as they start reading, they're matching the two. So if it's car, you have a picture of a car. I do like not an actual picture, just like a line, black and white picture. Then you put car underneath. They know, oh, my cars are in there, but you don't have a ton of them. And they're just very, very simple laid out and organized so they can help you as they get older, clean up, put away, all of that. And then I mentioned this earlier, but a cozy corner is actually really important. The cozy corner is a place that they can go to relax and to self-regulate. It's an early way to teach self-regulation. And is something very important. It's never, ever used for a timeout. It's something that they go to on their own. So let's talk about how to engage the sensory system. And we've talked a little bit about this, but the first is easy. Get on the floor. It's the best place for them. Get on the floor with them. I'm always on the floor. I was just doing a training at a school last week, and all the teachers were sitting up when I got there. And I was like, does anyone care if I sit on the floor on the carpet? And then by the end, like other people were sitting on the floor, and they were all in the position that they learned the best in, right? So don't be afraid to get on the floor with your little one. Let them try, and they are going to fail, and that's okay. because that's how they're going to learn. If we don't let them try to get the block in, the square hole, a lot of times they're never going to learn if we always do it for them. This also means letting them try things like climbing and things like that. We always obviously keep it safe, but letting them try. A quick thing as a tip, a big safety tip, as they start moving, I consistently teach them, I turn them around and teach them you come down backwards. That is a big safety hack and you're going to have to do it a lot of times, but we want to make sure they know that if they get up on that bed, they're turning around and coming down backwards and not head first. If they get up those stairs, they're coming down backwards and not head first. So you're always turning them around and showing them you come down backwards from everything. And that's just a safety thing. Let them to get moving, and then being okay with the mess. I don't like feeding them with a bib. Just feed them in their diaper. If you have a dog, let the dog be under them. If not, put a mat and just be okay with it. And Marielle's laughing. This is a hard one. I can't tell you. I mean, it's funny because we get really messy in our parent and me classes, and we have had some feedback from parents that we would like to know just how messy we're going to get in each class. It's hard for parents to accept the mess. And when we're like, let's go wild, it's definitely tricky, but be okay with it. And, realize, tell yourself through it. Okay, they're building neural connections. Okay, they're building neural connections. And then follow their lead. You may have a plan and they have a different idea, and that's okay. And their idea is going to create something amazing. So they'll tell us, what they need, and we want to let them explore. So some simple tips and tricks. You don't need anything fancy. Recyclables are like my most favorite thing. A box, some veggie paint, or like purees or anything you have, a smoothie left, whatever you've got, and a like barbecue brush. Put them in the box, the barbecue brush, let them go wild. Super simple. We all have Amazon boxes lying around. And then always come back to play. Just whenever you're like, how am I going to get there? How am I going to reach that milestone? Come back to play. Come back to the floor. Using pillows is really, really important. Have pillows on the floor to help them crawl over as they're starting to walk. Have them walk over the pillows, things like that. And then help a baby move through the milestone. So when they're an infant and they're starting to roll, we roll them just how they would roll themselves. So to help them build in that motor planning. And that goes for every milestone. And then again, paying attention to their cues, and toy placement is key. I alluded to this earlier. If we want them to roll, guess what? We're taking that toy and we're putting it up and over and kind of right at the spot we want them. And in my course, Get Set for Baby, I go over the specifics of all of that as well. So that is the end. Meryl, do you have something?
Sorry, I'm muted. You have two questions. One is a closed fist, a concern for a 4-month-old. The baby doesn't open their, hand to touch a toy.
I would continue to practice that. And if you want, I'm hesitant to answer specific things because everything is really, really different. So if we chat offline too.
Great. And then what are tips to get a 6-month-old to sit who has signs of readiness but is still struggling and falls over to one side?
Good question. So when they're sitting, so if you sit in a straddle behind him or her, and then use a toy, right? So what's going to get him practicing up is bringing the toy not down, but up, because that's going to pull up. So do just a lot of practice. Make sure you're doing tummy time, in really sitting right behind him or her, and then bringing that toy up to eye level. So we're practicing up. So using that toy.
And can you do a little bit on tummy time, babies who don't like tummy time positions? I know you have like on your Instagram, like alternate positions for tummy time.
Yes, I'm gonna stop share so my screen can get
Yeah.
bigger. Um, so yeah, tummy time. There are so many different tummy time positions. It's wild. So tummy time doesn't, first of all, it's normal for babies to struggle. Can I just say that? Like, totally normal for babies to struggle on with tummy time. But what we want is to continue practicing and help them get used to it. Tummy time on a ball is like one of the best ways to get them doing tummy time. You can do tummy time on your tummy when they first come home from the hospital. So, so you're laying back, have them right on your tummy. People are really nervous when they're first getting home. So that's a good way to start it. Tummy time over your leg, tummy time on a pillow. There are so many different positions on our Instagram. We have tons, but if they're struggling with tummy time, my first is to go to a ball. So go to a yoga ball. I put a swaddle over it. I feel like it's more comfortable, but you can do some very gentle bouncing like this. Remember using the senses to help calm them. That very gentle bouncing, that's calming and often helps them work through it. The other big thing with tummy time is it doesn't have to be this like long, break it up into like 5-minute chunks. And so my trick is after every diaper change, do a few minutes. And that will be really, really good for them. So you're just doing quick, few minutes, and that's it. And slowly they'll get used to doing it longer. Remember, they're not awake that long when they're first born. As they get older, we're going to increase it. Gentle bouncing on their tummy. Jan, I'm not quite sure what your question is. If you want to clarify in there, do you mean, what I mean is when they're on the ball, it's a very gentle bounce. Yeah.
And yes, the Instagram account is the Play to Progress account that we
Yes, I will put
about.
our handle on there.
You have another question about the difference between regular OT and sensory OT.
It's a really good question. Oh, Jen, I'm happy that helped. So sensory OT is very, very, there's a lot that OTs do. I'll say that. So what we do specifically and as sensory specialists is we focus on the sensory system. So our framework is using something called sensory integration. So we're focusing on how we're focusing on a child's sensory system, any sensory differences. We focus a lot on self-regulation and anything to kind of do with the sensory system. So yes, that includes coordination, that includes fine motor, all of that. We have a question for Nara.
Yes.
Oh,
Can you track the
I
app
see the
for
question
your
tab.
nanny? You got it. Okay.
Yes. So the Nara app is designed so that you could add any caregiver, whether it's a nanny, a partner, a grandparent, a neighbor, whomever you want helping take care of your baby. And we actually have a routine section where you could track tummy time. So, let's say your partner or someone else taking care of your baby did tummy time, then they would record that and you'll know how much floor time, tummy time, sensory play your child had that day.
Awesome.
And
That to me, you guys, is really, really cool. I know, we see it a lot, like most of our families are 2 working parents. And so that's incredible.
Yeah, and I think for all of the different routines, we talk all the time in coop groups. And Allie, I know you are a big believer in routines help kids to be regulated because they know what to expect and what comes next, starting from birth. So the idea that you can put them into a tracker to make sure that everybody knows, one of those things is it's so much pressure to be the gatekeeper of all things for babies. Like you're the only one who remembers everything, which my babies are 11 and 8, and I still feel sometimes that I have to remember everything. But the idea that you can put it and share it with everyone and have a plan, I think that's such a cool feature. Allie, you have another one. Do you see this one about less than
I
3 months?
do. This is a favorite question of mine, so thank you for asking this. You know what? Young babies can also do sensory play. One, of course, that tummy time, that's important. But little things to play music when they're in the baby carrier. So I'm a big fan of baby wearing. And baby wearing, guess what? That's sensory play, especially as you're moving, you're doing everything, engage with them. You can still sing to them. What I like to do is go tummy to tummy and just sing to them and talk to them and anything like that. That's all still sensory play. Remember, sensory play is anything that engages your senses. And one of my favorite things about this question is everyone thinks like they're too young. So, we can't play sensory play, but it just looks a little different. It's still sensory play. All of that.
Now you have a question, baby facing me or facing outward in terms of the best for their sensory needs?
So you have to go based on age and recommendation and all of that. So I'm careful.
Well, and also they hit a certain age where looking out is so exciting and stimulating and important in a different way. So
exactly. Once they're appropriate, age appropriate to face out and it's safe, that's great. Remember, it's going to be overstimulating. So if you're like trying to nap them wearing then you'll want to face them towards you if you're like needing to nap them while on the go on you, or especially if you have others, but obviously safety first.
And your thoughts on baby gyms? And then answering, this attendee's son comes home from OT exhausted, can't even function. Does that mean he's being stretched too much?
So, the baby gym question, I guess I have a follow-up question on that. And that is, do you mean a baby gym like the ones, everyone calls them something different. So if you mean a baby gym like the ones that they're on the floor and they just like are batting at the things at the top, that's great. If you mean the baby gym like the ones that they're strapped in, no. So depending on how you're defining baby gym, how I define baby gym is there's like a mat and then they have the little like bar on top. Those are great. And that is actually the one thing that I think everyone needs. But if you're talking about something where they're strapped in, then no. I always am just careful because we all have different words for the same piece of equipment, I think one thing, I know we don't have a lot more time, but I want to answer this. I know babies should develop at different paces. How much should we worry? This is a really favorite question of mine, because you're right. Development happens on a big track. One thing I really want to say though, and I think it's really, really important, is the CDC took crawling out of Milestones. I feel very strongly that I disagree with that. It is extremely important. So important that a baby crawls. I think it's something in our world, everyone is kind of beside themselves of why was this taken out of the Milestones, but Milestones all happen on a range. Now, is there a point where we get concerned? Absolutely. But I think what happens right now is parents panic so early. Get on the floor, make sure you're doing tummy time, make sure you're giving them the opportunity to move, and check in with your pediatrician, or every state has early intervention, which is under 3. It's a free evaluation. They come to your house. If you're worried, go for it. Trust me, and I get it, because in a world of therapists, we all have everyone's always like, can you look at my chart? Can you look? Everyone's anxious, right? It's a thing. But try not to let the anxiousness get you, and recognize if you're in a parent and me classes and one kid's doing this and the other kid's doing that, kids do develop on a range. I think we get this like hyper paranoid about it, and we are on Google and all of this. Yes, there is a point we get worried. I'm not going to say there isn't, because there is, but try to just focus on, what you can do, and check in with your pediatrician, and do not go down the Google hole. Just really try not to go down that. If you have a great parent in me class with someone who is an OT or PT leading it, like all our pre-crawlers and crawlers led by us, we do flag if we're worried about a child, or if we're like, okay, just do this, And so
I wanna also say there's so much great data on early intervention and doing things. And if you think of milestones as just being a guide to help you know when you may benefit from something, then it can be a positive sort of thing where I think Allie and I would agree, like every child would benefit from time spent with an OT. Every child would benefit doing speech therapy, like just more one-on-one time with someone who's skilled and knows what they're doing is always great for kids. So it's not something to fear in terms of getting services for young children, making a huge difference. Would you agree with that, Allie? Obviously, since this
oh
is your
my gosh.
sometimes we're so scared of them because we think like it means a diagnosis and a something, and sometimes it's just flagging something we can work on in a wonderful way where it can make such a difference, and have really the delay can have a really positive effect on catching up early and getting new skills.
And by the way, we have sometimes this wait and see mentality. I totally disagree with that mentality. The reason I disagree with it is because we know you can make progress like that with a little one. That gets much slower as they get older. I won't lie. Like,
so that's one of the great things about milestones. If that's what it takes to get a referral for something, then that's a great thing.
And I think
in the NARA app, we just recently added milestone tracking. So it has all the CDC developmental milestones broken up by age. Again, as we talked about, it's a range. It doesn't have to happen like that week, but it is there, and it's a low stress way to track milestones instead of putting it into Google and then you go down the rabbit hole of all the scary stuff. So that's also there.
Yeah. And I'm, I know we're running out of time, but real quick, the stroller, because I want to clarify, I'm not talking about a stroller. If you live in a city, you're using a stroller, use the stroller. Totally fine. I'm talking, sorry about that. I hope that I saw that question. I was like, wait. I need to clarify this. Not totally fine. Honestly, strollers are great. Like they can look out, they can see, they're experiencing their worlds. It's amazing. It's the same with a car seat. You need a car seat. You need your mode of transportation. I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about when you're home and we have them strapped in to these different things. I know there are so many more questions, but if anyone wants to know more, like I said, our Parent and Me classes, you do not need a pediatrician to send you. You can come to any of our Parent and Me classes. They're priced just like a class, or if you have bigger concerns, we do also do the OT sessions. So if you're local to LA, let us know. If you're just wanting more tips, I have an online course on how to help you meet milestones. That's for parents that you can do. And Cooper, I love Mariel, and I highly recommend everyone joins. I send parents her way all the time. So,
but just to remind everyone, if you go to the top of the chat, you'll find the links. I know somebody asked about finding all of these amazing resources. So they're all at the top of the chat so that you can click and learn more about the three of us and all of the work that we're doing to support parents. I think that's our goal, all three of us, figuring out how to support parents and making it as easy as possible. This was so phenomenal. Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Allie. It was really valuable to I think do this. And I think judging by all the questions and comments, it was a very successful conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.